All right, Mark, welcome to the WealthTech podcast. I am happy to have you on the show. I am looking forward to today's conversation, talking about all things AI, which is obviously the latest rage and with good reason, and talk about how AI is impacting the advisor tech stack and advisor productivity, and really how it's evolving the industry in general. Mark, would you mind kind of giving a brief overview of yourself and Zocks?
Yeah, it's great to be here, Mark. So quick overview of me. I'm an engineer by training. So have worked on software products for quite a while. I was at Microsoft for quite a long time. Had a company called Hearsay Social, which a lot of people in the industry use if you're at larger firms. And then was at a company called Twilio before starting Zocks about little over 3.5 years ago now. And Zocks is really an AI assistant for financial advisors that frankly tries to help them with all of the administrative tasks that they spend time on. And, most of them don't love to spend time on. And it saves them a lot of time, saves their team time, but also, as we're seeing now, as we're expanding to more and more scenarios, is really helping them grow their business and frankly, like just provide the best client experience they can. And so that's really what we're laser focused on, is really helping advisors use AI to just frankly improve productivity, improve the client experience, and grow the business, and frankly, like hopefully love their job more.
It does seem like this is one of the areas where advisors are saving significant amount of times, 3 to 4 hours a week per advisor, which is fairly significant. It's also one of the ways in which advisors are adopting AI, one of the early use cases for AI adoption. Before we get into all that, though, I'd love to hear, whenever I have a chance to talk to a fintech founder, I'd love to hear about your founder's journey. So, why did you start, the firm? What was the kernel that got you motivated? And then also kind of looking back on it and saying, after 3+ years of breaking rocks and being at it, what has surprised you the most?
Yeah, so we started the company. So just flashback a little bit for me. I was at a company. I built out the product team, and then was the CTO of a company called Hearsay Social. For those who don't know it, it's essentially a SaaS company, a vertical SaaS company focused on financial services and insurance that initially helped people get on social media in a compliant way, market, and do all those things, and then kind of expanded out beyond that. So that was really the first time I saw firsthand, in my view, how powerful vertical software can be. Like, it's just, it provides a lot more value to the people. It's tuned a lot more to the scenarios. And we became, through that long run, became very familiar with the financial advisory space, the RIA space, and all of this. So that was kind of a key background. Then I went to a company called Twilio and ran their communication infrastructure around the world and onboarding and a whole bunch of other things for a while. And for those who don't know Twilio, it's essentially a layer that typically developers use for communications and software. So if you ever talk to an Uber driver, that's actually Twilio. If you get a text message from Airbnb, that's Twilio. All of that is actually a service called Twilio underneath. Through that, I became the sponsor, the exec sponsor, and worked with a lot of enterprise clients, and a lot of those were banks and insurers. And so what was happening is we talked with them. They would program their communications, and they would start to ask, like, is there any way to actually see into what's going on here? And we started looking at what's possible there. There's a lot of breakthroughs in AI even before kind of the LLMs were big, that allowed you to start to do things like topic detection and things like that we thought were very powerful. And so we left Twilio. I left Twilio earlier in 2022, really with the focus on, can we get structured data? And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but structured data out of conversations for advisors. And the reasons we started with advisors is, we knew, like, one of the things that's really interesting for me in this space is, I think because of the compliance and the security and now the privacy requirements, it's typically fairly hard for financial advisors to adopt new technologies quickly. Like, they can't just use random stuff, right? And so, we just thought, hey, if we go take this and tailor it and build it out as a proper platform for the industry, it'll be very, very powerful. And then what happened is we started to talk with advisors more, and frankly, even like do more customer research and get them on an early adopter program. It became very clear that both they were spending a lot of time, both preparing and following up for meetings. Like, that was a key kind of scenario. And and they frankly didn't love it. Is maybe the right way to put it. Like they really want to be spending time with clients and doing all of these things,
You want to be
or
present, want to be engaged, right?
yeah, that's it. And they want to be doing that. And they always viewed it as, like it's the whole spectrum, right? Some people were really great at capturing data, but they felt like they were not engaging with the client properly. Some people would engage with the client and think they knew everything and then leave and like, have stacks of stuff that they still hadn't actually written up or followed up on with the client. They'd be months behind. So that's really how we got going. And then, I think what we're seeing in this latest generation, if you will, because it's moving quite quickly, is, our initial thesis around structured data is not just like notes and CRMs and things like that, because that makes sense. But I think whenever we see new technologies come in, it very often kind of replaces the manual, which is like we need to take notes and put them in CRM. By getting structured data in, and you can see this in a lot of what we're doing now, we can actually start to drive a lot of workflows, right? We can fill out forms for people, we can open accounts for people, we can start to do things like moving money, we can create, like fill out e-money and fill out plans for people, all of these types of things. And so that for us is super exciting because, I think we kind of viewed the first version as a bit of a painkiller, like, hey, this is annoying, we'd love to fix it. And now
That
what
low
we're
value
seeing,
first mile type of thing.
yeah, I think everyone always starts with like, hey, it's great to save time, which is
Yeah.
true. And it's great, especially again, like, when it's things that you don't love doing. And the feedback's been super positive, which is awesome. But then you can take that and start to do things. And so we have like users now that have really started to change the way that their businesses operate, which is great. Like they're able to just serve a lot more people or offer more services too. And, we can chat about it a little bit more. But you can start to see these like kind of the evolution of getting more sophisticated in how they're using AI and really kind of changing the way that that they operate and that they work with clients. So yeah, that's how
So
we
what has
started and that's
surprised you
how
the
we got
most?
going. Surprised me the most. It's funny to say this because like I've been in tech my whole life. The speed of AI, even like we knew going in, we're
Yeah.
like, oh, this is going to be great, da da da, and things that we thought were 2 to 3 years to build, 9 months, right? Just like immediate impact, and then and that has continued to be true, right? Like the things that we can do now versus even when we launched early last year are really pretty phenomenal. And it's funny because we live in this space, obviously, like we look at it every day. And we talk to a lot of advisors at conferences and things like that. And we were at one recently where we were at the conference last year and like this fiver came up and they're like, oh, I was really meaning to look at this and just super busy over the last year. Would love to chat with you now. And it's amazing how much like has changed in the last year since, like you kind of have to pop out, but you just realize like, wow, this is moving very quickly, right? And all the good and the bad with that, like some really meaningful improvements, as you were mentioning, around time savings, and we're seeing these business improvements. And there's a lot of stuff that I don't think won't last, frankly, right? Like it's kind of more of a toy, and people will play with it, but it's not quite there yet. But the speed and just velocity of the AI movement is, I think, caught a lot of people off guard.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really great in terms of taking unstructured information and making it structured, and then you can do all sorts of stuff with it. I think see that around obviously with meeting notes and being able to capture that. On the alternative investment side, you see that as well because it's primarily a document-based information structure, and to be able to
Yeah,
unlock that information has been
100%.
huge. Certainly, that low value first mile, capturing those notes. Versus having somebody, maybe a junior person there dictating that information or having to have three people in a meeting and really none of them are present because they're trying to capture everything versus being
Yeah.
fully present with the client is huge. Love it. Tell me a little bit about the impact that your product has. A typical use case for advisor that adopts your product? What type of
Yeah.
impact do they have?
So I would say starting off, we see, kind of people go through these phases of, kind of comfort with AI. Starting off, it's exactly as you said earlier, right? Like they're spending often an hour, sometimes much more than an hour between preparing and following up with client meetings. And so depending on how many client meetings they're doing, like, we'll save them 5 to 10 hours a week purely on that. We also find that typically their teams, depending on the advisor, are spending, I'll say a couple of hours a week filling out forms. Like, if they're writing insurance, those are insurance applications, intake forms, if they're growing their business quickly, all of those types of things. And then we've recently launched the ability to reply to client emails. And again, there we see the advisor or their associates spending roughly about an hour to two a day replying to client emails, right? Like just random questions coming in and doing those things. So right off the bat, there's very meaningful time saving for them, and that often um, that often allows them to spend more time marketing, spend more time with clients, or frankly, just get their time back, right? Because as you know, a lot of advisors work a huge amount of hours, per week. So that's where they start. And then the other thing that's great once they get going is as they integrate the planning system and integrate the reporting system, like an Orion or something like that, we do really see them convert more. And it's like we've dug into it quite a lot. And so for people growing their business, if they come in and someone has like kind of a suitability meeting or an intake meeting or, kind of whatever you want to call your first set of meetings, they can get a draft financial plan with, a very tailored email and a tailored plan sent out to that person literally within minutes, like under 10 or 15 minutes from the meeting. And what it means, so like, what we've seen, I would say pre-Zocks, is that often is taking, a few hours to put it together. And then often the client doesn't see it for like 4 to 5 days. And frankly, sometimes the next week, right? That's not, like, if we're all honest, that's pretty common. And so now they're able to follow up literally in minutes and it's personal. And so I think anyone knows who's ever buying anything or selling or trying to get service, like if you talk to someone and they that they heard you, that they're handling your concerns and they follow up quickly with what they can do, like your chances of working with that person are just drastically higher. And so we're seeing that as kind of a phase two where they're growing their business more. And then as we get into some of our, I would say, larger firms, just in the sense of like the AUM they're handling, we see them start to expand services or bring on more clients. So almost always in those cases, they have additional clients. Maybe they're like, as they categorize them as tier two or tier three or, gold, silver, whatever. They're able to then go engage like kind of the tier two clients because they can actually prep, meet with them, and follow up in under an hour if they have like a half hour, 40-minute meeting. They grow business that way. Some people are just seeing additional households because they get more they just frankly have more capacity. And then one of the cool things we see now is people also are connecting us with other systems. So like with like with an estate planning system, like a Wealth or a Vanilla, Luminary, like one of those. We're starting to see the same thing with tax, and like those integrations are getting deeper for us. And so what they're able to do is frankly just offer services in addition to, pure AUM. And that helps them as well. And frankly, the clients love it because they don't, it's cheaper for them a lot compared to going to other spots. And they don't love, getting ping ponged around between people all the time. And so we've seen all of those and it's great. And that's why, as we say, like we really believe people will change their businesses with AI, like the way they operate and how they do all these things. And there's going to be a number of things that are frankly possible where you can make clients very happy and do it in a very profitable way for you, which is a shift right in the industry. Like I think for a long time, there's been a bit of a ceiling where like, without just a lot more staff, you're kind of continually hitting these limits, if you will.
Yeah, this is where I think the hype lives up to the reality, and that it's literally changing the industry, and that you know, 2 points I think that stood out when you're talking about this is one is that advisors will be able to offer more holistic services. Clients want that. You're a trusted provider. They want more holistic. They want more of a a financial coach from them, not just somebody that's managing the investment aspect for them. And also this kind of if you look at it big picture, this democratization of wealth management,
Yeah,
right? That you're
100%.
because you can get down to that lower tier. Maybe it's people that are younger in their career that don't have that investable assets, but still are going to, if you can get them on a better path earlier, you can really impact their lives. And then, you take a look at certain professions too, doctors, dentists, where they load up on a ton of debt early in their career. They certainly don't have the investable assets, but you look at the lifetime earnings of those will make fantastic clients later. If you can grab them earlier, you're benefiting both the firm and the client. So to be able to bring down that offering is certainly huge. To be able to be more responsive, I think is fantastic. I think one of the things with being a SaaS provider is obviously onboardings really can be difficult for any type of technology provider. Change management's particularly hard for firms and advisors in particular. Yeah. Let's talk about CRMs for a little bit. There's a little bit of talk out there
Sure.
about, note takers trying to become CRMs, CRMs actually adding native
Yeah.
note taking capabilities. Um, It's certainly interesting to, especially when you're talking about you're providing an integration layer across products. But tell me a little bit about, your approach and how you see kind of the industry in general kind of shaking out between those kind of core systems.
Yeah, so our maybe I'll take those in reverse order. Like I'll talk about kind of how we look at the different systems and then our approach. So like we think each of these systems has, a pretty critical role. Like I think when people think of CRMs, often what people think of as a CRM, which is like I keep my contact information for my clients in there. In this industry, they're a lot more than that, right? Like they're often books and records for people. They are hubs of integration, right? So like data
Right.
will go into them, and there's all of these different things that are there. Some people love their CRM, a lot of people don't love their CRM, but like that's often because of the configuration or whatever they're doing. And so there's a
Right,
lot that
right.
that system does.
Adoption of it, not the CRM itself, right?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes I think, as we've all seen, right? Like it's the system that makes you do the thing you don't like to do. So if you don't like taking notes, you kind of don't like the system that you need to put notes into, right? Even though it has nothing to do with that system. And so our approach, and we see the same with planning systems, right? Like there's a number of different planning systems out there, different approaches in them. Some of them are very useful for some people, or we even see like the same advisor may use multiple, depending on the client and the situation. And I think that's the same with that, like portfolio management, all of those things. So our approach is really to connect these systems, right? To make sure that the data kind of going into them is the right, that they're updated, that ideally in our world, we are saving not just the advisor time and making their practice better, but they should be getting more value out of these systems, right? So they should be getting more value. Again, I'll go back to eMoney because it's a great example. Like it's a very powerful planning tool. Generally the largest complaint about it is like it takes a lot of time to put the data into it, just straight out, right? So if we can get rid of that time and just click a button and push it all in, you'll get a lot more value out of your planning tool straight out, right? Same with CRM. If you have reliable notes in CRM, and it's not just notes, but it's also like, can you fill out the account and the contact information and all the details there? Are there workflows that you've invested in there that we can then go kick off? All of that just makes all of these systems more valuable because they're frankly just easier to use. And pretty much every system lives on data, right? Like a CRM system without any data is not very useful.
Right.
Planning system without any data is not very useful. And so the more data we can get into these systems, frankly, like the more value they provide the advisors and their teams. And that's great. So our approach has very much been that. I think we do see like note taking, like CRMs naturally are doing it. I think we're seeing a few other ones come out too. Our view on that is like I think for very simple note takers, some of those are good. It is challenging, like when you go into these like larger, whatever, you have a client that let's say has like 2 to 3 generations of people in the room, maybe one or two are on Zoom, you maybe have a tax attorney on Zoom, or maybe they're in the room, and like all this, getting that right and getting the accuracy and assigning the data to the right people is both challenging and also critical. Like if you don't know who's saying what or whose information it is, like it's
Right.
kind of useless. And I think also we see that, notes in the CRM are important, but there's a lot of other things that people really want to be doing coming out of these meetings, right? And so you're not going to like start up a CRM note taker because you want the note in there and then start up your, like whatever proposal generation note taker because maybe you're going to do a generation for a proposal. Like it's just kind of
Right.
odd. And so for us, we just view it as like, look, this is data. You want it structured. You want it moved across those systems. And we'll see, I think, a number of things come up with AI. Like we literally, as we think of AI, like AI is software, right? And so like we'll hear people say like, oh, I have an AI system, or like, are you my AI system? And it's a little like saying, are you my software, right? And the reality is like you're going to have multiple software systems. Almost every software system that people use today will have AI components in it, if not already, like in the next 6, 12, 18 months. And so, our view is that we can make the whole ecosystem stronger and better and stitch it together, like better value for the advisor, and frankly, make the applications more valuable. And so that's how we're approaching it. I think other people are taking different approaches where they may try to replace some of these systems, but we don't really see that as a big focus right now. There's so much opportunity in green space ahead of us, and frankly, areas that advisors want help and that we can help grow their business. That doing that is really where we spend all of our time, not trying to like replicate features out of another system that is already there and is frankly doing pretty well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't like their CRM because the data is incomplete or inconsistent? Like, is it, being involved in a sales function? Like, it didn't happen in CRM, it didn't happen at all, right?
Yeah.
But different firms have different levels of adoption. And if you don't have full adoption of the product, then you're second guessing the data, and then once you second guessing the data, then you lose all the automation benefits of it. Whereas if you could have that data reliably updated and populated, and like you said, then the CRM has certain workflows and it can kick off. Like you're now getting the full benefit of the CRM because you have a proper care and feeding of it, which is great. Tell me a little bit about, because you sit on this kind of really big data set, right? And obviously AI and data are really interrelated, but what are some of the unique insights that you're able to kind of provide that go beyond just the kind of the meeting no process?
Yeah, there's a lot there. Like I think this is probably going to get a little more technical than people want, but I'll go there just for 30 seconds. Like, in the industry, if you look at what an advisor does, right? Like everything they use and what we think of as the middle and back office, like the custodians, all that, like those are all big databases and they're very structured. They can query them. You can say which of my clients has Apple stock, which ones, like whatever you want to go do. On the client side, so if you think of everything kind of between an advisor and their team and their clients, that is frankly just completely unstructured today, right? Like people maybe have notes, and it's very hard, like without reading through a ton of notes that you hopefully took, right? It's very hard to go see these things. And so the nice thing about it being structured is you can start to query across things. And so we see everything, like the example we use a lot, frankly, because it's important for a lot of people, are like, you can then start to go in and see, like, who has a child or a grandchild and know 529 plans, right? And seems like a good reason to go reach out. Um, we can also now detect things like really between meetings. We find advisors are great kind of meeting to meeting. So let's say I'm meeting with my advisor every 6 months, but let's say my whatever son is getting married in 2 months, right? Like we don't have a meeting for that, but we can start to nudge them, right? And have these insights, which is like you should reach out and say congrats on whatever. Is there anything I can help with for the wedding or whatever it is? Send them a present, all that. And they want to do that. Advisors love to do that.
Yeah.
They just can't like do that across 80 to 120, different people and keep track of everything. On the other side, we see things like, as we're starting to do more people like kind of using our data to put into trust and estate planning systems, like everything from like, who doesn't trust, this is more negative one, but who doesn't trust their child spouse, right? In the sense of like from a financial point of view and all this stuff. And so you can start to really see into things. And like I think most, if not all advisors, at least most for sure, know what to do in these situations if they know that situation is there. The real trick is like, am I following up? Did it get detected? And am I actually doing the right things? Right? Like, did I tell the estate attorney that they may want to consider something that's more contained for them because, like there may be some concerns on the family trust, like things like that. All of these different types of things. And so the really nice thing for us is that you can start to get these insights, even topics, right? Like how many people are worried about tariffs right now, right? Start of the year, nobody really would have put that on the list. Now it's there, right? And there's certain people that worry a lot. There's certain people that don't, and that's fine. But it allows you to do much more customized outreach. It allows you to make sure that when people are going through these life events, that you are giving them the extra support and understanding them, and frankly, even remembering that they're going through them. Because I think what everyone sees is if you take care of a client through these life events, which could be great, like, could be whatever, children getting married, buying houses, whatever that is, or it could be tough, like, separations and things like that. If you take care of them through that, like they're with you for life, right? And frankly, the other years are pretty cruise control-ish, right? You just set it and you go and things are going well.
Yeah.
So all of that information, which we think, and we just think as financial management evolves, it's becoming a lot more about that, right? It's a lot more about like, help me get through these things, not like, hey, what returns can you give me versus this person or anyone else? It's
Right.
like, as I get to these stages of life, what should I be doing, right? To your point, like if I'm a doctor or dentist and I have a bunch of debt, what should I be doing now? What should I be doing later? And, for a lot of people in a lot of states, taxes are a very big deal. What can we be doing to help those out? So it really allows you to just query across quite a lot of those things and get specifics out, as well as kind of at a higher level, start to see that. The other big one, a little different, I think, from what you were asking initially, but for people growing their practice, is there's a lot of data you can query on, like, how are your associates doing with clients, right? Like, how are they engaging them? Are they not? all of that stuff. And, I think what we find with advisors is in order to grow their practice, they do need to hire people at times. That's often not their forte. Like they're often
Yeah.
really kind of engaged either on the planning side or with the client side. And so this is a way, like with our scorecarding and our dashboards, that really just help them understand, like, okay, how can I coach this person more? And they get immediate feedback on it without having to sit through every meeting for a year.
How does that work? I mean, certainly you could probably tell how much they're talking versus the client is talking, which is kind of a key in basic
Yeah, it's a
metric,
good
but
start indicator. Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
right.
so we do all the basics of like who's talking percentages, but it's also things of like, are there certain agenda items you want them to hit? Are they doing that? Are they
Yeah,
asking for things? Like a simple one that's very powerful is like, which is a great way to help grow people, is just like what did you say that got the client talking the most? Right. The other one is like, did the client tell you what their goals or problems were, or did you tell the client? Which sounds similar, but is very different. Like, if a client
right.
tells you, like, hey, my family's doing great. I really want to retire at 63 so I can spend time on the beach or, whatever I want to do. Like replaying that to them, keeping them when they, maybe they're losing track or thinking of other things. Like as you're working with that client, repeating that back to them is super powerful. If you kind of tell the client what they should be worried about, then it's a lot less meaningful. It's the easiest way to put it. So all of that we can go through in scorecards, and then even with that, they can customize. So some of the larger firms we work with have very specific, like I would say, playbooks on how to make sure that they're understanding the client's problems and helping them with it. And so those can essentially get programmed in as well from like, are you spending the right time on these things? Are you covering these topics? Are you asking these things? How much time are you speaking? Is the client saying things? And also these like tips of, what is the most engaging thing that you're asking? And that helps people, you know, kind of give them a little bit of a toolbox, frankly, on like, how do I get a client talking?
It's interesting. Not only is it helping with personalization at scale, but you're helping to kind of apply standards across the firm based on these things.
Yeah, yeah, completely. Completely.
Let's talk a little bit about AI adoption, guardrails, privacy, these things that are keeping advisors up at night or should be keeping advisors up at
Yeah.
night. Product agnostic, stepping back and taking a look at it from the advisor's seat. How should advisors be thinking about AI adoption? What policies and guardrails should they have in place, and what should they be thinking about in terms of privacy?
Yeah, so I would say like there's a few kind of guidelines that we give people regardless of what, they're doing, what systems you're using or anything else. At the first, I would just start with like, you need to understand why you're doing this, right? Like what's your goal, right? Like, is your goal to save time? Is your goal to get better financial plans in front of people? Is your goal to whatever it is, right? There's all of these systems, and there's going to be more and more coming out that are quite impactful, but you just kind of want to understand like why are you doing this? So that's the first one, and that allows you to kind of answer the rest of the questions. Um, I wish there was kind of like we always get questions on like, what's the one thing I need to ask to make sure it's okay or not? And the problem is like it's a little deeper than that, unfortunately. So there are
Yeah,
some baselines, right? Like I would say the very clear baselines are you, the advisor, need to be able to fully control the data. Like you don't want a system that's keeping your data. You definitely in the AI world don't want something that's training your data because that frankly means that
right.
you're never going to really get it back. Like even though they may delete the root data, like your data is now like essentially stitched into all this. There are standards, like SOC 2 is a common one used in the US and North America. I would definitely ask for those. Those are like both very important, but also unfortunately not like they're necessary, but not sufficient in their own right. Like you can have a company with a SOC 2 that operates in a way that you don't like. So I would make sure that you fully control the data and can erase it and delete it yourself. Make sure that they have the security guards that you need, right? So like if you need single sign-on, if you need two-factor authentication, any of these things to secure it, because this data is very personal, make sure that they have that. Make sure they do have a SOC 2 or something like that. And you should also be able to frankly just straight out talk with them about this, right? Like if you ever can't get a hold of a vendor or a tool, or they don't really want to talk about it, they just keep sending you a SOC 2 and not answering detailed questions. Like that's a pretty big flag. I would say one of the nice things in the space is that there are a lot of different tools that are focused on the industry. And generally, like at least all the ones that we've been really interacting with, like even our competitors and some, are following these guidelines, right? Like it's much trickier if you're using more of a consumer product like a Chat GPT or something off the shelf. even in those
Like generic note
situations.
taker or something like that, right?
Yeah, even in some, like, we always say if you're, if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. So watch out for that. And then if you even if you are paying though, like some of them still can do stuff with your data. And so I like it's just frankly a little easier. Like anybody who's serving the industry directly will be able to answer the questions that I just laid out in like 10 seconds, right? Like it's super fast. And then as just overall data hygiene, like data is tricky because, as you mentioned, with AI, it's very powerful, and there's always scenarios that you may not think of. But in general, you don't want to be keeping a lot of copies of data around in different spots. You don't, like you kind of want the data you need to go do things or that you may need in the future there, and not a ton else. So, like if you like when we integrate with systems, as an example, like we will query those systems to help with meeting preparation. We'll query it to fill out forms and do all these things, but like we don't copy that data into our systems, right? Like there's no copy of your CRM or copy of your, custody data.
Oh,
And frankly, nothing should be doing that. Like it's just risky. Even if it's a very secure company, like you just more copies is more risk.
I think those are good guidelines in general. SOC 2 Type 2 is a good indicator that they're following,
Yeah, they have procedures and
repeatable,
they're following
audible.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly it.
It's certainly not the end all be all to say, oh yeah, these guys are fine, but it's certainly a marker, a standard, a certain level that they need to
Yeah.
have. I think firms that maybe have not adopted AI should have some sort of policy, but also to consider that, you know, if it's too restrictive of a policy, that there's going to be some sort of shadow usage, right? That they're gonna get on the phone, they're gonna have ChatGPT on the phone, they're gonna be typing stuff in, people are gonna
Yeah.
experiment with it. They should be able to experiment with it, but in a way that's safe, in a way that's not revealing client sensitive information, right?
No, totally. And I like that's a really important point that you made, where I would say the worst problems that we see is often that a firm locks down too much. And so you end up with this like shadow usage of a bunch of things, right? That's why like, opening up things and doing certain things are just like, we see it where frankly firms will lock things down. Then all of a sudden we have a bunch of signups with Gmail addresses. And you're like, oh, I wonder what happened there, right? And it's just like people will naturally try to help themselves and help their clients and everything else. And so um, I would say the most important thing for two reasons is to just like enable some AI usage and get people comfortable with it. Part of it is because like just as we said, if you don't, they will. They'll
Yeah,
like there's other ways of doing it.
like
And
Jurassic
then this
Park, it's getting out.
yeah, that's it. Like it's gonna go. And then the second one is like it is, and again, not this has nothing to do with our system in general, but just like in the world, right? Like this is going to impact the industry in a way that is is almost hard to imagine, right, frankly, right? And like the analogy we kind of tell people is like imagine running your whole firm without software. Like it's almost, even though you may not love some of the
Yeah.
software you have, like it's essentially impossible to operate in that world anymore. And that really took probably about 30 years, right, to go through all of that. And you're going to see the same thing happen in AI in probably the next 3 years. Like it's just going to be, like the client expectations are getting higher and higher because if you can do these things, right? Like if you can leave a meeting and have a draft plan sent to you in 15 minutes, people start to expect that. And when you're, especially for people dealing with younger clients or, generational wealth transfers or whatever, like, they're on Robinhood and those things you can go click
Yeah.
and just do things instantly, right? Like they don't want to wait 6 days to get a DocuSign to get permission to send them a folder. Like it just isn't, the way they operate anymore.
I think that's a good take. Let's talk about the evolution of AI. Obviously, we've had generative AI. You've had kind of first mile taking unstructured information, changing into structured information, which has unlocked a ton of value, saved a ton of time. Generative AI, which we've been talking about in terms of executing these tasks on this structured information. Where is AI going in the wealth management industry? What's next?
It's always hard to predict AI, I'll just say. The way that so we like I often go in and talk with executive teams about AI, just kind of in what's going on in the industry. One of the things I almost always start with is a graph on AI improvements. And the key thing to know about this graph is it's exponential, right? Like so it's improving very quickly. And it's actually like I don't think people think of it this way, but it's actually a very just straight line on an exponential growth. And the reason we say that is I think people were like almost like, well, there was no AI or there wasn't much AI, and then all of a sudden ChatGPT came out and then it just like shot up. And the reality is like the industry has actually just been growing at this crazy rate for quite a while. And what happens is whenever you kind of just hit the next threshold, the next thing happens, right? So like I live in San Francisco for over a year now. Like pretty much am in Waymos multiple times a week, which are like fully autonomous driving cars, and it's just normal, right? They drive great, they're good. And you're like 3 years ago, this would have been like very weird. And now it's just normal, right? We've seen definitely multimodal come in a lot. And, so you can see it creating movies, you can see it analyzing movies, creating, we just launched what we call document intelligence. So you can basically take documents, drag it in. If you have document shares or attachments, we'll just take those and analyze those. And it's amazing what data you can capture out of like, frankly, images or even sometimes pretty grainy images. And so the multimodal piece, like I don't think, outside of maybe marketing, I don't think a lot of financial advisors are going to be generating a lot of movies. But this ability to now go take data from all of these different spots, like when LLMs came out, it was all about being able to understand text, which was very powerful, right? Understand speech and be able to like, from our discussion, know the high level points, what are the follow-ups. Now it actually can do that across a lot more physical goods, like images, like any documents, paper you have around. All of that is frankly here. I think the next big thing that we see is that you will see more and more taking actions for advisors. Like when we launched early last year, if we told you that we were going to automatically do something like to your client or for your client, like every advisor would have naturally looked at us very with very nervous eyes. And
Cool.
what we're seeing now is as the trust builds and frankly the systems get good, right? There are things which are like, yeah, why don't you just go ahead and take care of that for us, right? Like it's low risk, there's not a lot of compliance, like whatever those are, booking meetings, following up, changing things, all of that. And so you'll start to see more of this like trusted, what I would call full automation, not on huge things like like the advisors for us are always kind of in the loop, but you'll be able to see more and more of things where it's just like click and go and things that are the way we think about it is like these workflows are fairly complicated today. And more and more and more and more of that will be able to get handled by AI with like the advisor on both sides, right? Like probably coming into it with a little bit of scanning and tweaking and then coming out of it. So all of that's going to happen. I think everyone probably knows this, but in the for investing and planning world, like AI has been going on for quite a while, right? Like that's frankly where a lot of machine learning, I would say between that and video games, like those are probably the two biggest AI usages up until LLMs, and that's just continuing on and on. We're not super deep in that space, but there are some really cool kind of planning and modeling type systems that are coming out, and some of them are out already that are really interesting. And so I think you're going to see a lot of things in those situations as well. And then for anyone at larger firms, AI actually should make compliance easier. It should make compliance better and more natural. I think compliance, we've always, it's been challenging because there's, in all these situations, you have a policy, you need to teach the policy, and then you need to like supervise it. Supervision has been very manual, and like AI will make that a lot better. It should make it, frankly, a lot smoother for advisors and almost like seamless and behind the scenes without some of the challenges and craziness that people have seen.
Those are, I think those are all good points. I think, I love that saying, the future's here. It's just not evenly distributed, right? That
Yeah,
a lot of these
that's it.
capabilities are in some sort of industry in some sort of way that maybe the financial industry, which tends to be a lagging industry in terms of some of these capabilities, just maybe has not experienced it. I do think, the potential for really being able to deepen the client relationship with AI, which I know sounds like an oxymoron, is there because the advisor can
Totally
really
true.
focus on what's important. Those important salient points can be brought up to the surface a lot easier. Personalization at scale, those type of things. I do get worried when you talk about AI societal impact. I just think the playbook that happened with social media, if we end up repeating that, is not great. I don't think social media, I think it has as much negative ramifications as it does positive ramifications for society, and it seems to be getting worse by the day. And I hope, we don't certainly end up down a similar path with AI.
Yeah.
Although I think
I would say
AI is,
the area that we see that I like I don't want to say I worry the most, but I think people need to be very cognizant of is like a lot of this, like we talked about a little earlier, a lot of this manual labor, to be blunt, like administrative tasks, taking notes. Not a
Yeah.
lot of people were using junior staff to do that, right? And
Yeah.
now like, you're like, do I no longer need junior staff? And then the question becomes that, well, like, how are you training your junior staff, right? Like
Yeah.
who are there and how are you training them and all that? And that's where for us in a good way, like the scorecarding and those types of things we have can actually like help them ramp more. But I think people do need to be cognizant of like, you know, how are we growing our team and making sure that they're learning and doing the things that they need to do so that you have a great workforce and that frankly at some point you're probably going to retire and pass it on or do whatever else. um Almost before you were forced to do it because there's just so much work, you'd be like, great, we'll just get people in, they'll do the work, and then we'll see who learns the quickest and go. And now you need to be, kind of to your point on social media, right? Like you can imagine a situation where people get so efficient that it actually is no longer like a, kind of like a self-growing industry, and that would be a big problem for us for sure.
I mean, it should open up completely new careers and capabilities that we I can't even dream of right now. But that it is tough for younger people coming out of college these days and that workforce. I think you used to learn by doing. I mean, some of the ways you used to figure out how to automate something is by doing it manually and then automating
Yeah.
it. And likewise, younger staff learn by kind of doing those tasks and then they kind of appreciate the individual steps in it. When AI comes in and does it all, it's like, the ability to think through problems, the ability to solve things when you can't deconstruct things, like that's
Yeah, and
it
just even
is
the
good.
mentorship, right? Like you'd
Yeah.
kind of, like I think it's going to get back a little bit to almost kind of like the apprenticeship models, right? That a lot of industries have had for a long time and probably getting a little bit more formalized in that world.
All right. I love to end these podcasts more on a personal note, Mark, with three questions that have nothing to do with wealth tech. I am going to throw one out that does still have to do with AI. What is one way in which you use AI in your personal life?
I use AI for a lot. So it actually has taken me it even took me for running an AI company to get used to this, but like I use Claude a lot personally. It's an Anthropic product just to like ask things, learn. I think it's a fantastic learning tool, right? And I
Yeah.
think things where I'm sure all of us have had these, like you're almost sitting on the couch looking at something or reading something like, oh, I'd love to know more about blah. I now have it on my phone and everywhere, and I just start asking it questions, and it is like made me smarter. I'll just put it that way. It makes me smarter, makes it easier to learn. So I love that. I use it for that. I also use my Alexa for different things, but that's probably the biggest AI change and impact I've had in my world.
Yeah, I can't even use like the traditional search anymore. It's such a poor experience compared to using AI, and it really becomes that kind of co-pilot in your life around these things. You live in San Francisco. I love San Francisco. I think it's one of the great cities in the US, if not on the planet. What is one of your favorite spots in San Francisco that people might not know about?
The place that everyone should go in San Francisco, if you're ever there for more than a day, is actually the west side of the city. So Ocean Beach, it's called Ocean Beach. It's a huge, long beach. A lot of people don't know, but about a year ago, it's called the Great Highway. It's the highway right next to the beach is all
It's
now
closed, right?
closed,
It's
and
open
it's a
to the
huge
public.
park. And there's stuff on there now. There's like a skate park, there's playgrounds. It's awesome. If you want to go walking, you want to go jogging, there's a bunch of restaurants on Terraval right there that are really easy. Just go over there. Take a Waymo over. You get to, ride the driverless car over. It's great. If you're in the city, it's great.
This was the highway. Did they shut it down during COVID
COVID,
and then they
they
just
shut it
decided
down
not to
during
open it
COVID a bit, and
up?
then they just had a big vote, and it's essentially now a park. It's permanently a park. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that. I
it's
think
great.
that was one of the positive things that came out of COVID. A lot of outdoor eating as well. It's one of those things. What's a book that you've read recently that you'd recommend?
I'm going to go way off the reservation here and tell you, for anyone who's doing long drives, which sometimes happens, or you have long commutes, Spy School. My kids love Spy School. It's a series of books. It's kids' books, and my both my kids are now, the younger one just went to college, and I still read. They just came out with a new one, and I read take any Spy School book and read it. They're great. Totally
You
different.
alone?
It is not a self-improvement book. It is not a business book, but they are great. They kind of pop you out, and they're really fun. They're great on Audible too.
Oh, well, if we're talking about spies and people are looking for a show recommendation, Slow Horses on Apple. Oh my God, some of the best
Yeah.
writing out there. And then in terms of a book recommendation, I'm going to throw out for April Rudin, Wealth Management with a Difference. Really, She talks about how firms should market themselves getting away from the stuffy, smells like mahogany type of marketing
Yeah.
and more modern approach. So I put a recommendation out there for my friend April Rudin. I think it's a great book. But Mark, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing the time. And I love this conversation.
You as well, Mark. Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone for the time. Really appreciate it.
Good stuff.
Bye bye.